All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, can see.
Okay, so today the title of my topic is to control or not to control. That's the question. And hi everyone, my name is Lu Yu. I'm from the Shopee ISFE team, which stands for Internal System Frontend team. So today, if you can tell from the title, it's most probably about like React forms. So everyone knows that React has there are two ways to build forms in React. One is control form, and another way is uncontrolled form. So why not we look at example of the control form. So this is directly taken from the React's official documentation. It's still using the old class component syntax. So I guess I'll show a hook example instead. So if you can see in the code example, to build a controlled form is fairly simple. All you need is a use state hook. So basically, you are hooking up a change handler, on change handler for your input component, and also you are controlling the display value of this input component using the state. And basically, whenever there's any change happen to this input, it's going to set state. React is going to set the state, and it's going to trigger re-render of this entire component to reflect the latest change. And there's no surprise that when you submit the form, you are going to get the value you input into this component. So this is fairly easy and simple to implement and understand. And in HTML, form elements such as input, text area, and select, they typically maintain their own states and update it based on the user's input. But in React, mutable state is typically kept in the state property of a component and only updated with set state. So with control form, we're actually letting React handle the states. So it's like React is telling the DOM, hey, let me take care of the states. Please just take a rest. So whenever there's an unchanged event happens to this input component, input element, we're calling the set state. And the set state, the state change will trigger a re-render of the component. So this is how it works. And on the other hand, we have uncontrolled forms. And this is actually one of the approach listed on the React's official documentation. And in order to write an uncontrolled form, the way that the React official documentation suggested is to use ref. So basically, you are attaching a ref to your input component like this. And when you actually submit your form, you take the value of your input component like this. So this is the example of that. Basically, why is this? Basically, when you click, oh my God, why? What's happening? Oh yeah, it's back. So basically, when you click submit, it's going to retrieve the value from the input element via ref. And there are actually, for uncontrolled forms, to write uncontrolled component, instead of writing an event handler for every state update, you can use a ref to get form value from the DOM. And so basically, React is basically telling DOM that please manage your own state. I'll grab the state from you when I need them. So when you actually click the submit button, React will take the value from the ref. And there are more than one way to do control forms with refs. So one example was that you attach a ref to your input element. And another way is that you still have a unchanged handler for your component, but instead of updating a state, you update the ref. And we all know that ref change doesn't trigger re-render. So this actually won't cause a re-render of this component. So this is like closer, it looks closer to the state approach. And there's another way to which you can use to reduce the boilerplate to even less by not using refs at all. So basically, you are not attaching any ref to any element. You are basically using the submit event for the form element. So basically, in the handle submit, this handler, you can access your inputs value by using their name, which you have declared on each of their declare here and here. So an example would be why is this blocking? Sorry. Yep, this is the example. So basically, just to show you that it works, I'll click submit, and you can see that we can get the value. And if we take a look at the event, and in the target, we have the form itself, and we can access like the first input by calling dot input one. We can access this one by calling dot input two, and we can get their value very easily using this syntax. So how about validation? Because with the control form, validation is pretty straightforward. You can, because you have access to the state directly, you can validate however you want. But for uncontrolled form, it's in a ref. So during submission, because you can retrieve your value, so you can actually do any validation you want. And combined with HTML, your browser's built-in validation functionality, it can be simple as well. So for example, you can use the set custom validity method, and it's going to have this browser built-in UI for validation when an error actually happens. And this might look different on different browsers, but yeah, this is how it looks on Chrome. All right, so let's do a quick summary about control forms. Control forms, they are easy and intuitive to implement in React. It gives you full control of the form's value, which means you can dynamically update them, you can validate, transform or format the values very easily. But the downsides are pretty obvious as well. You have to write a lot of boilerplates. Like you need to initialize the value, the state. You need to write event handlers, and but this can be reduced with abstractions like using a form library or building your own form builder. And another downside is that re-renders, control forms re-render every time when there's a state change. By using React memo could mitigate the issue, but it's also like it's another thing to worry about. So to demo this issue, I have created a control form with a lot of inputs. This is actually quite common, like in large admin portal projects, which we actually work on a lot. So notice that I'm not applying any CPU throttle here. If I type something, if I type in something quickly, you can notice the lag, pretty obvious. So if I apply a CPU throttle, it's going to be more obvious. Yeah, the lag is very noticeable. And another downside is that it becomes complicated if you want to convert an HTML form to a control form. Let's say if you want to migrate a very old legacy project into a React, this is going to be very troublesome. So React actually links to the official documentation actually links to an article that compares the two approaches. And in the article, there's a table listing the features provided by the two approaches. You can see that control forms tick every box. But uncontrolled forms, they are good for one-time value retrieval, validation on submit, but they fail at instant field validation, conditionally disabling submit button, enforcing blah, 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 all this. So can we do better? And so on 10th of March, I saw on Twitter, there's an article written by Sean on uncontrolled forms. And he proposed a new way to write uncontrolled forms. So it's basically like uncontrolled forms on steroid. The trick is to use the name property on input on your input component, and also attach a change event handler for your form component. And by doing this, you can do instant validation very easily, because you have whenever there's a value change on any of these form elements, you can handle them. And this approach actually ticks every boxes. It's quite amazing. I can actually show you a demo of that. This is actually in his article, one of the demo. And you can see that there's no React use state hook in this demo. And if we try to put in something, and for age, the validation rule is that it must be above 13. So 13, it fails. 14, it passed. Nice. And it has validation on submit as well. So how does it actually do that? For validation at submit is pretty obvious. You can do that for the submit in the submit handler. But for instant validation and all the style changes regarding whether it passed or failed the validation is actually in the handle change method handler. So basically, every time there's a new change, it's going to validate all fields. This is a function written here. So it's going to validate all fields and set the validity using the rule defined here. And for the styles, it's actually in CSS itself. You can use the CSS pseudo selector invalid and valid to set the styling for both valid and invalid input. And because do you remember that in the previous demo there's a Chrome built-in validation error UI? Basically, you are customizing that here. So by leveraging the power of CSS pseudo selectors, you can achieve custom styling for your valid and invalid inputs. If you need more complex error UI or trigger some UI change outside this form, you can always adopt React use state. So the only difference is that you are not using state to manage your form values. You are only using the states for your error, and it's not going to re-render every time there's a change in your form. And if you need a form library to do that, there's one library called React Hook Form. It provides both uncontrolled and controlled approach, and it's a pretty lightweight package. And I've been using it for a few months and have been quite happy with it. So let's do a summary here. Control forms. For control forms, form values they are managed by state in React runtime, and the form value and the React state is always in sync, because the UI is driven by state in React. And for uncontrolled forms, it's much more closer to vanilla JavaScript. And it also provides the benefit that if you have a legacy project you want to convert to React, it's very easy to do that with uncontrolled forms. And the form values are only retrieved by React when needed. So to answer the question, to control or not to control, it really depends. Yeah, so if you like need very if you need to know about your state every time, like at all times, the more obvious choice is control form. But if you are more aware, you need to take care of performance, then uncontrolled form is a pretty good way to go. All right, that's it for my sharing.
Hello. Got
Hi.
questions? Okay, so for other people in the YouTube live channel, live chats, you can start asking questions also. We do have a few questions from the live chat. One is there anything uncontrolled input cannot do?
Is there any technically no, because with the power of JavaScript, you can access the DOM directly. So technically, there you can do anything with that, right? But if you are saying if you are limited only to React and you are not allowed to access the DOM directly, then I guess you can only do. Let me find the table. Where is it? Yeah. If you are only limited by React, you cannot do like all this, right? But because you have access to the DOM itself, you can do everything. Yeah.
Okay. Right. I think we got one more question. What's your opinion on using debounce for controlled forms? Oh, I think there was a prior discussion on the performance thing. So initially, I think Chen Chen was asking, what is your explanation for performance being laggy when there are a lot of inputs? And I think you did mention that it can be optimized with React Memo. And then
yes, a React memo can optimize for this type of situation. My point is that you need to basically think about this, right? Because like React memo is not free. You need to write it yourself. You need to think about it.
right.
So yeah, that's an extra thing to worry about for developers.
Right. Okay. Then following that, what about using debounce?
Debounce, I've actually never tried the debounce way, but from what I understand, it can mitigate the lag issue. Yeah, I think it can solve the problem as well. It's just that if you are using control form, right, and if you need instant feedback for your state change, then that might be a problem. Other than that, that should be a pretty decent way to mitigate the problem.
Actually, I think I recall that Dan Nemerov talked about this in the JSConf Iceland talk 2 years ago. Actually, I think he has a demo with debounce also.
Oh, is it?
It's a talk a few years back also. So, but the demo he built was quite interesting. So he built something that looks like a clock, and then if the lag issue is significant, then the clock will look like there's a lag that has a cone shape that will show up red. So that was quite interesting. Anyway, we do have more questions. How do you handle dynamic form that show and hide next input based on the previous input?
Dynamic show and hide next input with. Oh, in that case, if that's the requirement, I guess you can still achieve that with uncontrolled form. It's just that you are stepping into manipulating the DOM directly, that area, which is not desirable for when you are actually developing in React. So in that case, I guess control forms are a better solution. But yeah, I'm open to ideas on this question. Yeah.
Actually, I have a question. So out of the forms that you're building for our team, right? Are you using, which one are you using more? more often?
If I have a large form, if I have a very small form, it's like if it only has like 1 or 2 inputs, usually I'll just use a control form. I might not use the form element itself. It's just like 1 input or 2 input boxes, and because that's pretty easy to write. But if I have a huge form which I need to consider the performance issue, I usually go with the uncontrolled form route. But I do use a library to do that, to make my life easier. Yeah.
Which library is that? Did you share?
It's it's the library here. Oh, sorry. Oh yeah, it's this library called React Hook Form.
Oh, okay, I see. Cool. Okay, let's see if there's any more questions. Okay, I think the chat diverts into a discussion, which is also quite interesting. Then after your sharing, you can read the chat and you can see if you want to react to any of those. So
yeah, okay.
having said that, thank you for your sharing. It's amazing. This is the second time I'm hearing this, and I'm still really enjoying this.
Thank you.
Right. Okay. So why don't we pass this to